Hey, are you kidding me? Why are you eating that, Mom? My husband told me on the phone while I was out of the house working. For the past 5 years that I was married to my husband, our relationship was not very good. We always fought a lot. He would come back to the house where my mother-in-law and I lived, and it was always the same. One day, out of the blue, he decided to order me some homemade cookies while he was at work. When I got home from work, my mother-in-law opened the cookies without my permission and was devouring them. When I called my husband and told him what my mother-in-law had eaten, he was shocked. At that moment, my mother-in-law fainted. I took my mother-in-law to the emergency room, where I was surprised to learn the truth. I immediately called the police. My name is Sarah. I am 35 years old and I work in a beauty salon. I met my husband, Salo, at a bar. My colleagues at a beauty salon always went to the same bar every week. They invited me several times, but I didn't really want to go. So I spent most of my time alone. But one day they convinced me, saying it was a girls' night out. At that time, I didn't go out much because I wanted to improve my nail art. So all I wanted to do was work. The last time I had a boyfriend was when I was a student. My coworkers were worried about my lack of interest in men. So, they spent a long time planning this meeting at the bar with some of their friends. Thanks to them, I met my husband. So maybe it was good in that sense. Salo, my husband, works in real estate. And just like me, someone brought him to the bar to meet someone. And that someone was me, in this case. While everyone around us was having a great time, we were chatting in a corner. Apparently, he likes to cook. On his day off, he makes elaborate dishes and sweets. Although I am also an accomplished cook, I was amazed at the colorful and delicate dishes he showed me. If you can make such wonderful dishes, why don't you dedicate yourself to it? I suggested. But he replied, "Oh, I like to keep it as a hobby." So we kept talking and laughing. We exchanged numbers and arranged to go out for dinner that same day. A few days later, I was invited to Salo's house. All my friends and their friends were coming over for dinner. I was a little nervous when I arrived. But there was a huge feast on the table. Everything was beautiful and delicious. I was happy that day and ate everything I was entitled to. When I noticed he looked at me, and as soon as we finished eating, he confessed his feelings and we decided to go out together. After that day, we were officially together. I dated Salo for 3 years. The food he cooked for me was so delicious that I gained a little more weight than before we started dating. Thanks to him teaching me how to cook, my culinary repertoire expanded. We also traveled to so many places together in search of delicious food. We had been together for 3 years and had never had any major fights. My work was going well and I also felt very fulfilled by having met this man. After 3 years of dating, he proposed to me on my birthday. I cried when I saw that shiny ring. I knew that with it I could spend every day in peace. On the wedding day I was very happy. I greeted my in-laws and the ceremony went well. Both my in-laws are very kind people, as is my husband. They welcomed me warmly as their own daughter. My in-laws have been married for 30 years and they are very close. When I look at them, I feel like I will get along with them. Even though we don't get to see them very often because they live very far away from us. But I had a feeling we would get along. Life with my husband was also great. We agree that whoever arrives early prepares the meals. It was common for me to come home from work and have my husband and a feast waiting for me. When I ate his food, the tiredness of the day's work would go away. My husband would look at me happily as I ate. We still have the same relationship we had when we first started dating. However, after 3 years of marriage, there were some changes in our happy days. My father-in-law suffered a sudden breakdown at work and passed away. It was hard for my husband and I to accept the sadness of the situation, and my mother-in-law was devastated because they were a beautiful couple together, and now she had no one. I didn't know what to say to my mother-in-law when I saw her crying in the hospital. Even after some time after her death, my mother-in-law still looked devastated. She couldn't even go to her company, so she ended up quitting her job. My husband and I would always check on her, but she never seemed to get better. Every time I went to see her, I thought about what I could do to help her. One day, when I went to see my mother-in-law, as usual, my husband suddenly suggested, "Why don't you come and live with us, Mom?" His mother was surprised because she hadn't imagined it. But my husband is the only son, and my mother-in-law has no other family to rely on. Seeing my mother-in-law's condition and leaving her alone is worrying. The only way to cheer her up would be to move in with her. I'm not against my husband's proposal, but I wish he had told me in advance. "Sarah, do you agree with this?" My mother-in-law was the first to ask. "Of course, we'll live together." I replied with a smile, and my mother-in-law looked happier than she had in a long time. To be honest, I was a little nervous because I never thought I would have to live with her. But my mother-in-law is a calm and kind person. I'm sure she would be just as calm when it was just me and my husband. A few days after I started living with my mother-in-law, I realized how naive I had been. "Sarah, welcome home," she said when I got home from work. It seemed like my mother-in-law did her homework while we were at work. "Thanks." I thanked my mother-in-law politely and went to the balcony to get clothes. There, I discovered that the clothes I had separated to wash by hand had also been washed together. As a result, the clothes had shrunk, and the color had transferred to my other clothes, which were white. I was shocked, because they were my favorite clothes. Why did she bother to wash the clothes if I had left them separate? Did she realize that they weren't supposed to be hung? But I couldn't blame my mother-in-law, because I didn't explain that to her either. "I'm going to wash the clothes in the basket by hand, so you don't need to put them in the washing machine, okay?" I said quietly to my mother-in-law, but she didn't answer. My mother-in-law kept doing the same thing over and over again, putting the clothes in the washing machine, even though they were supposed to be washed by hand. Sometimes my wet clothes ended up in the washing machine, and those that should have been in the laundry basket somehow ended up in the trash. When 2 weeks passed, I started to think she was doing this because she wanted to, and I politely let her know. But my mother-in-law ignored me, just responded with, "Oh, sorry." And she always repeated the same thing over and over again. I did my best to wash my clothes my way, and she wouldn't listen. I told her not to come into my room, but my mother-in-law kept harassing me in small ways, and she told my husband about it. But all he would say was, "No, she couldn't have done that, there must be some misunderstanding. How nice if it were." I was very frustrated with my husband for not believing me. One day, my mother-in-law told me that she had cleaned the house. When I got home, I looked through the trash can because I was looking for my nail tools. Then I found my work tools from my vocational school. They were my most precious tools, with which I had gone through many hardships. As soon as I saw them in the trash, my blood rushed to my head. "Please don't throw away my tools. My dirty clothes too. You've always tried to irritate me. What are you trying to do? If you don't like something, tell me." At that moment, I found myself yelling at my mother-in-law. "You're a nagging wife." I threw it away because it was dirty. "If you say I'm trying to annoy you, it sounds like it's my fault." My mother-in-law looked at me as if I was wrong. I was also angry because she still called my precious tools dirty. So, I kept yelling. "Dirty? What are you thinking? Sarah, what are you doing?" I heard my husband's voice behind me. I didn't realize that my husband, Salo, was already home. "Sarah is misbehaving. She's saying things that aren't true," my mother-in-law said. When I tried to deny it, he replied, "It's Sarah's fault. She gets angry when she knows that she is not well." At that time, I was so upset because my husband did not listen to my words, and that is why I started crying. Even after that, my mother-in-law continued to harass me. We had a lot of arguments and my husband was always on her side. Some of the relationship between my husband and I was not as good anymore. He hardly ever cooked for us like he used to. I often wish I could go back to the good life we had before we moved in together. The only saving grace is that my mother-in-law doesn't haunt me when my husband is home. I don't dread coming home when I'm at work and my husband is off. But one day after about a year of living like this, when the three of us were having dinner, my husband suddenly said, "I'm going to move to a place by myself." And what a surprise that was, I immediately asked, "Moving by myself? What do you mean?" But all he would tell me was that he had already made up his mind. He said he thought I would object if he told me first. If he knew how I felt, he should have told me. I asked him if the three of us could live in a new place, but he said he would move back in a few years so we wouldn't have to move. We all knew that my mother-in-law and I don't get along. I wonder if he doesn't mind us living together. I insisted that I didn't want him to move every day from then on. But that didn't work. At the end he yelled at me, "Shut up. I'm trying to make a living. I have to move out of town. You might as well move on." With that, he left alone for his new workplace. After that, life with my mother-in-law was hell. In addition to harassing me with dirty laundry and cleaning, throwing away my favorite dishes and clothes, they opened my packages without my permission. Her behavior was getting worse by the day. My husband was working away from home, but every now and then he would call me to say, "You two are fighting again, aren't you?" My mother-in-law must have been bad-mouthing me. Again, I denied it. The best I could, and we continued to fight at home. Then I fought with my mother-in-law, and on the phone I argued with my husband. I was fed up. While I was working, I could forget about the bad things at home. I was very happy to have a job. One day, when I came back from work, my mother-in-law was eating cookies. I didn't know where she got them from. These are the best cookies I've ever had." She told me so I could hear her. I didn't mind answering because I was making dinner. When I got a call from my husband, I thought it was probably about my mother-in-law again. But I picked up the phone and my husband said, "Did you like the homemade cookies I made?" He asked me happily. And my husband's call reminded me that it was Valentine's Day. He had never been home, and on my birthday, or our anniversary, he never sent me a gift. I wondered what had gotten into my husband's head that he sent me homemade cookies. I assumed that it was the cookies my mother-in-law was eating. The cookies that she had been so delighted with. At that, I couldn't help but express my feelings so loudly. I realized that the reason she was talking so loudly was because she had opened it. The package was mine and she had eaten it without my permission. Her mother said they were delicious. I replied coldly. "What?" my husband said. "That's what I said. Your mother took the liberty of opening the package and eating it. That's what she always does, right?" I told him. "Hey, you're kidding me. Why is my mother eating?" Suddenly, my husband said loudly. And at the same time, I heard a loud noise behind me. My mother-in-law fainted. But I didn't understand what happened. "I'll call you later." And I hung up the phone. My mother-in-law seemed very upset and was having convulsions. I called an ambulance and they took her to the hospital. Thanks to the emergency treatment, my mother-in-law was not seriously injured. However, I was surprised to hear the doctor's words. "Your mother-in-law may have eaten poisonous mushrooms." I immediately thought of the cookies my husband had sent me. No, it's not possible that there was a poisonous mushroom in the cookies. But that was all I could think of. I notified the doctor and called the police. The police came and examined the cookies at my house. Sure enough, they found poisonous mushrooms in the cookies my husband had sent me. I wondered if that was why he was so happy to ask me if I had eaten them. I was so upset that I didn't understand the reason for my husband's actions. I told the police where he was. When my mother-in-law woke up, I told her that they had detected the poisonous mushrooms. Then she started crying. "Sarah, I'm so sorry for everything I did. I was so jealous of your happiness that I did nothing but be mean to you. I didn't understand where or why those cookies had poisonous mushrooms. I think Salo wanted me to eat them," I said. "She was the one who knew Salvatore had told me to give them to you." "I'm sorry." My mother-in-law apologized. She told me that she had spoken badly about me to my husband and that she always did that. Then she told me that he was going to send me cookies with poisonous mushrooms in them to punish me. My mother-in-law said that it was a bit extreme. But my husband ignored her, saying that it was nothing fatal. It would just give me a slight stomach ache. She also said that the cookies must be the reason I was filing for divorce. I couldn't believe it. As far as my mother-in-law was concerned, she was having more than just a stomach ache. After my mother-in-law received the cookies from my husband, I was worried about what to do with them. My mother-in-law didn't want to turn her son into a criminal. If something happened to me, she would choose to eat them herself. I couldn't stop shaking when I heard this story. This problem cannot be solved with a simple apology. "Do you think you protected me? You are also an accomplice, you know that. Salo should already be in jail. I never want to see your face again." I told her as she apologized. On the way home, I got a call from the police, telling me that my husband had been arrested. I ran home, grabbed my things and went back to my parents' house. Later, when I was released, I asked my husband to file the divorce papers through my lawyer. It was also decided that I would receive alimony. The lawyer told me that my husband had an affair before he moved out of town. He told me that it was with a roommate who worked, and the reason was that my mother-in-law and I didn't get along, and that the atmosphere in the house was bad. Well, that wasn't the reason to have an affair. He wanted to spend more time with his coworker, so he transferred to be closer to her. And he thought that if he was cold to me, I would file for divorce. So he started fighting with me because of my mother-in-law. He got tired of me not asking for a divorce and decided to commit this crime. I wonder why I put up with it all these years. I had a little hope that one day he would be the good husband he was when we were first married. But if that were the case, I wish I had filed for divorce sooner. I never thought that my husband's cooking skills, which I loved so much, would cause me so much trouble. My husband was released from prison, but he was fired from his job because of it. Apparently, a rumor spread around the company that he was having an affair and his coworker was fired along with him. In the end, she left him and now he lives with his mother because he has a criminal record and cannot get a job. He had to spend a lot of money on the woman he had an affair with and has almost no savings left. Live a poor life while borrowing money. My mother-in-law is now harassing my husband in the same way she harassed me. You can imagine how difficult it has been for me. For a while, I was in shock and couldn't open up to anyone. But with the support of my family, I was able to recover and decided to open a nail salon at home with the money from my child support and the money I had worked so hard to save. Since I was a student, my dream was to open my own salon. On the day my salon opened, my colleagues from my old job came to congratulate me with flowers and gifts. As difficult as things were for me, I could not forget them. My heart is full of joy because my dream has come true. Fortunately, I have a lot of commitments, since I don't have to worry about anything anymore and I can do the work I like. Seeing the happy faces of my clients when they get their nails done is what makes me the happiest.